next topic, which is Doogie Kamealoha MD. Love is a mystery. I was focused too much on saying Kamealoha right that I botched Doogie, but here we are. Uh, we talked so much last week about how much we loved episode 1, and honestly, episode 2, perfectly equal quality. We didn't get any more Creedence Clearwater Revival references, and as a Creedence Clearwater Revival fan, my heart hurt a little bit, but I wasn't expecting any more. But I was concerned a little bit because we had Jake Kasdan, who directed the Jumanji sequels, directing the pilot, that maybe there'd be a drop off in quality going into episode 2, but there wasn't. I think we're right on the right track, and if you didn't watch the episode and maybe didn't watch a previous review, basically the show is a reboot of Doogie Howser, which starred Neil Patrick Harris, and it now stars a new actress. She was on Andy Mack. Her name was Peyton Elizabeth Lee, 17-year-old actress who plays Doogie, who now lives in Hawaii. And she, just like the original show, she's a young doctor. And I think this show really balances uh, Doogie's like being a kid while also being an adult and being a professional doctor. I think that's a really hard balance to have, and I think they do that very well. Plot of this episode is basically this guy comes in, he was on vacation in Hawaii, and just somehow he becomes paralyzed and he doesn't really know how. Didn't really have any fall, didn't really have anything figured out. And then we have the subplot with Doogie, the guy she was hanging out with and dating and kissed in the last episode. She tries to figure out, wait, does he really like me or not? And her mom, who is also her boss, while she's trying to figure out why this guy's paralyzed, be like, oh, if you're trying to figure something out, you go back to the basics of science or the scientific method, and that makes her realize, oh, I should do the scientific method to figure out if this guy likes me. And that just kind of, like with most shows, causes her more problems, and it just makes her more confused. And that's kind of the general plot of the episode. I don't want to spoil it, but I've talked for a while. Tristan, what do you think of Doogie Kamealoha MD, Episode 2, Love is a Mystery?
Yeah, you mentioned that we were really impressed by the first episode, and I'm continuing to be impressed. This was just, like you said, just as good as the previous one, and it didn't have the big name director like you mentioned, but this director, Erin O'Malley, has worked on some good stuff previously. She did some episodes of New Girl and a couple episodes of Fresh Off the Boat, so she has some stuff that I've seen before, even if I didn't necessarily know the name. And it was like a really good continuation. It picked up right where the previous episode left off, pretty much, and the tone continues to be exactly as good as it was the previous episode. I think it balances a good job of being family friendly enough that you can all kind of watch it and be wholesome. You're not going to offend the kids. They're not going to be worried that the kids are going to see something inappropriate. But it's also mature enough to engage with themes like teenagers and their actual feelings, their actual problems, and I think it is just being able to balance that is a really important thing for a show like this. It's going for a family audience, and I'm having a great time with this. I'm really having just enjoying the ride. I'm invested in some of these characters too. I think Steph, the friend Steph, is one of those characters that could become like a cliche dumb best friend, but I think not she's not becoming like a flanderized character where it's like she's still a real person, and she still cares about her friend and does what's best for her. I mean, she's not like completely clueless. And I also like that she has that crush on Kamealoha's brother. And in a war show, I think that would be like a really long plot where she's trying to keep it a secret because she doesn't want to offend Kame. And Kame's when she finds out in like the season finale, she's going to be so mad. Say, how could you do this? He's my brother. And I like that from the first episode. She's like, oh, cool. I don't get it, but cool. Like, pursue my brother. That's cool. If you like him, that's awesome. And that's kind of a cool subversion of a plot that I thought that I'd seen a bunch of times.
Yeah, and I like that aspect, and one of the aspects I really like is basically, well, to go back, one of my problems a lot with movies right now is there really doesn't seem to be any like family movies. There's kids movies and there's adult movies, but outside of like the MCU and Star Wars and these big budget IP movies, there's not really any family movies. And this seems to be not exactly like a kid show or an adult show. It's a family show. You have the plot with the kids. You also have her being a doctor, which I think can appeal to both adults and kids. But you also, like, they don't completely ignore the parents, and the parents are like full on characters with agency. Like you had this small subplot of the mom realizing that the dad is like this super romantic guy who always tries to be romantic and impress her, and her kind of realizing she doesn't do the same for him, and so she kind of tries to do that for him, which I thought was a nice touch and kind of emphasized this being more of a family show.
Yeah, I really like the family aspects. I think that's something that's hard to capture in some of these shows, even in like the best of TV shows. You know, even when you go to like the Mad Men's and the Breaking Bads, it's hard to like capture an entire family worth of characters and make them interesting. And I think this show's doing a good job. They all the characters have their moments and they all have like their complexities. And the mom could easily become the stereotypical like really strict mom who is never letting her daughter do anything she wants to do, but she has complexity to her own character. You know, you empathize to her. She seems like a human being. She's not just like this oppressive parent that you might get in a kids show. I think it's really rounded. I
Yeah.
also wanted to mention too. I want to shout out a YouTube channel called Hello from Hawaii that I watched a video on. That it's a guy who lives in Hawaii, and he essentially did like comparing Kamealoha's version of Hawaii to his version of Hawaii and like how he feels it represents the place that he lives in. And he mentioned some of the cool Easter eggs and the details, and I think it really helped me appreciate the attention to detail in this show. And he said, I can't remember the name off the top of my head now, but she mentions like, oh, me and all my friends are going out to this restaurant. It might be home late or something like that, and that's like an actual restaurant chain in Hawaii that people like to go to, and it's one that teenagers hang out at a lot. So it kind of fits with the realism of Hawaii in the area, and there's a lot of slang that they use that fits with Hawaii, and it never feels overwhelming. Like I wasn't watching that and be like, what is he talking about? What restaurant? I figured, oh, it's just that restaurant they go to, you know. But
Yeah.
I like the attention to detail that if you're from Hawaii or you know Hawaiian culture, that you get the extra little bit of spice on top of that. You know, you get the detail that makes it interesting.
Yeah, it's like the Max and Saved by the Bell. You know, it's their spot. It's where they go. You know, I don't have
Yeah,
to. I don't have to ever have to have been to Max to know what Max is. Oh, they go there and that's their spot. Like okay. And one of the things I did want to. I know you kind of brought it up a little bit, but as far as like characters and stuff, but I really like the boyfriend because I thought there's many different directions they could go in. If they could make him like the douchebag kind of jerk, or they could make him kind of the like goofy. But I feel like he's kind of a full-fledged character and a believable character, and a lot of his problem that is a lot of their problems seem to stem from the fact that he's intimidated by her, and how could you not be intimidated by dating a 16-year-old girl that's a full-on fledged doctor? Like, there's no way you wouldn't be intimidated, and no way you wouldn't be like, oh, she's definitely out of my league.
yeah, I like that they're not ignoring the fact that she's a teenage doctor. Like that could be something they just never talk about. Like, but it affects her relationships. Like, it affects Walter, and like in the last episode, it affected how she could go to that dance, and if she couldn't, like, it could be an easy thing for it to be like, oh, she doesn't really struggle that much. She's that good, you know. She's a perfect house. She's a perfect like a daughter. She's a perfect friend. She's also a great doctor, and it's just like she doesn't have any flaws. Make her like a kind of a Mary Sue type character. But I think they're giving her a lot of complexity and she's making mistakes and they're not afraid to have the main character make mistakes and like learn from the mistakes, and they're not afraid to have effects of her decisions. I think it's been a really impressive way to write the character and to adapt something that could easily become like shock and ridiculous in like a one season bad show that we watch one episode of and be like, not for us.
Yeah. I do have two minor gripes
Oh no,
with one minor gripe with this episode. Ronnie Chang had like one scene. I want him
not
in
enough
every
Ronnie
scene
Chang.
because I've watched him in Crazy Rich Asians, loved him in that. Watched him in Shang Chi. He was great in that. He's great in Young Rock as the rival wrestling promoter. And the other thing that's more a problem with the show is the guy she's interested in is like 16 years old and his name is Walter, and I feel like people would make fun of him for that, of having a grandpa name. But that's like the tiniest of gripes.
Look, I mean, she goes by Doogie in the show, so I don't know if she can
Well,
make fun of someone for having a.
the people at work call her Doogie. Her friends and whatnot. I don't even know if they realize that that's her nickname.
Yeah, no. Get some representation to guys with the weird names, you know?
Yeah. All
Gotta
right.
give us some love.
All right. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to next week. Anything else you want to say about this episode?
No, yeah, definitely looking forward to next week, and I think if they keep the quality going, this is going to be one of come to the end of the year. This could be one of my favorite seasons of Disney Plus for the year.
Yeah, definitely agree. All right, I think it's time